Okay, so this brings us to part 2, which is how to engage students with asynchronous materials. We have 2 speakers. To kick off, we have John Guest from Aston University. Hi, John. I think you're could you unmute yourself? And the floor is yours for the
colleagues, Steve Proud at Bristol and Ralph at Manchester. They sort of taught me into experimenting with this discussion forum called Piazza. And so I introduced it onto a bog standard talk module last September. I'd had a go with some discussion forums before, and all my previous attempts had failed absolutely miserably. So I decided to sort of have a go with this one. And I'll be honest, my absolutely key aim was to cut down on email traffic that I was getting and having to answer the same question time and time again. That was driving me bonkers. So I wanted to give this a go.
Sorry to interrupt, but there was a setting issue. I fixed it. You should be able to screen share now.
Oh, that'll be. Was it? So hopefully people can see this. This is this discussion forum called Piazza. You've got a sort of left-hand bit which summarises the discussions, and you've got this sort of big bit in the middle which will give you the detail of what's in the discussion forum. Now, a number of people had, and in fact, actually, I've just glanced, I haven't looked at this for half an hour. It's now telling me that 25 people have enrolled, and I set this up specifically for this event. So if you went onto the network website, there was a little video about how you could sign up for to use Piazza, and actually I have a few little questions in here now that people have asked, and by all means feel free to sign up after the session, and you know, we can carry on discussing on that. So again, let's go back. So I introduce this on a traditional module. I've tried discussion boards before and they've all been abject failures. I try this, and to my complete surprise, students start engaging with it. And I can honestly say it surprised me more than it surprised anybody. And I think there were a few things about it and about the design of this. I should actually stress straight away, it's free. Okay, number one, you don't have to pay any sort of license to use it, which immediately made it very attractive to my own institution. You can have, there are app versions for mobile phones, so you can download an app and it would work well on student mobile phones. And there were a number of things about it that sort of, when I started playing with it, that appealed to me. And if we've got a chance, I'll just share a couple of those things now as we go through it. A couple of the key things was it has different anonymity options. So here's a question: you can either set it so the students will be completely anonymous when they send you a message, or you can set it so they are anonymous to their peers, but they cannot be anonymous to you. And that's quite an and I don't know, you know, I think I've debated with a number of people what the best option is. Some colleagues are nervous that if they are not anonymous to the lecturer, that you might get this sort of social media type response and inappropriate stuff being written. You also have the ability to endorse answers. Okay, so what really surprised, I think this is what stunned me with this, is the students really started having, this was the dream, that the students themselves would start actually having a go at responding to the questions that other students had set. So I wanted it to be collaborative. I wanted to really introduce collaborative learning. So what happens here is when you set a post, if a student responds and you think that's a good answer, you can just click a button to say that's a good answer, and it'll sort of say instructor endorsed. And I think students rather like this. I think it gives them a sort of, you know, the instructor thinks this is a really good answer, and it sort of encouraged them to do it. It also has really good search facilities. Okay, so the one thing we're trying to get over here is answering the same bloody question again and again and again and again. So what this discussion forum has is a really good way to search to see if somebody else has previously asked that question. and it's got quite a sophisticated number of little algorithms that help you do this. And as I've already said, it's got a polling tool built into it. And for those of you doing sort of stats maths-based modules, it can use LaTeX, which is why I think a couple of the guys on you had used it on stats and maths modules. But what I'm going to do, so let's just do the real basics in the 5 minutes that we've got. Let's imagine that you want to post something. So this is summarizing on the left-hand side the posts. Okay, and you think, okay, I want to post to my students, and you just click the little blue button at the top that says new post, and you click on that. And if you look at the top of the screen, effectively in Piazza, you've got 3 types of a question or response you can have. You can ask a question, which you expect some type of answer to. You can write a note where you're not expecting an answer, but you could get some discussion going. Or you can set a poll, okay? And the poll is really easy to set. And I must admit, that was a real discovery. It was only after I've been using it for a few weeks that I began to find this quite a useful option. So let's, for those of you who know British children's television, let's go back to one I prepared earlier. So if you go here, for example, so you can just use LaTeX, okay? So I've just done this previously, and a really nice feature here is that if I just close that down a minute, you can preview the post. So you can check that can everybody see that okay? You can check that your LaTeX view is all right, okay, before you send it. So if those of you, one appealing thing with this is if you're trying to use maths, or you're teaching a stats module, and a couple of my colleagues who've done this with stats modules, that's one of the reasons it appears to them, or appeals to them. So if we go back to that new post again, so let's say I'm going to set a question. So we could say, I don't know, is Piazza any good? And then all you have to remember here is it has to be, Piazza has a sort of folder system. So every time you write a message, it has to be linked to a folder up here. And I probably won't have time to talk about that today, but it's a very easy thing. You can change the titles of these folders. It's a very easy thing to do. So I'm just going to link that to topic 1, and we could type a load of stuff. I don't know, I think it is really good, and then you just post the question. And if you see here, so it's a question, and you can have answers to it and follow-up discussions which you can track through the page. So I think we had quite a good one going, if I can find it. So is that the okay? Where's the? Yeah, so we had this discussion earlier, so you can see here how it would look. You'd have a sort of a thread of questions and answers, and actually quite a nice feature is you can use this question history up here to click through the question history if you've got a long string of stuff. Now, I suppose the proof is, did they actually use it? And another really useful thing about Piazza is it gives you fantastic statistics on the usage of it. So what I'm going to do here is go to my microeconomics module, which I used last year. So if we this is now an inactive class because it's a first semester module. And if I go to the course statistics, you can see the usage of it. So I'm getting sort of between 50 and 80, and obviously you won't be surprised that just before the exam, the usage went up pretty dramatically. And what this also does is tell you the top student contributors. It tells you the top student askers. It tells you the students where you said it was a good question. So it gives you all sorts of stuff. You can download all this as a CSV file as well. And an interesting question that will come up on the discussion forum of some of the people on this symposium was the idea of giving some sort of credit for people who engaged with it. And you would know quite quickly which students had asked questions or responded to your questions with answers that you then endorsed as good. And you could download that data really, really quickly. So it does have some really interesting statistics as well. On the screen here, just for an instant sort of pick here, if it's green, if you see a little green colour, that means a student has had a go at answering the question. If you see a little tick here, that means that the student has had a go at answering it and you've endorsed it. If it's orange, I don't know if there's any orange ones further down here. Yeah, so that means the instructor has responded to it. So it's visually quite good at just, if you eyeball it, you can see this stuff really, really quickly. And you can just quickly on this top here, you can sift through what you've not read. Anything that's updated since you've last looked at it. So you can very quickly have a look at the threads and what you've answered and what you haven't answered. So that's a really, really sort of brief introduction to it. I think the polling tool, the search facilities, in fact, so if I've got 1 minute, I just want to show you. So you can just, if I type something in the search box here, it'll tell me whether there's other questions or threads that have asked those questions. But what's really powerful, if I just go to a colleague site that's still open, so if we go to this one here, so this is what I really like. So let's click a post in here. So let's imagine I start typing in moral hazard. And immediately the really useful little algorithm here tells me straight away that there are other posts that contain those words that I might want to look at. You know, that the question that I want to ask may already have been answered, and that little search device there, I think, is really useful. And I think one thing that we learned this year, because we only started using it this year, is just to keep reminding students to use the search facility and to make sure that the answer to their question didn't already exist. You know, that it hadn't been answered before they posed the question. If anybody wants to, because I know we're really, you know, to overview that in 10 minutes is an incredible challenge. If people want to join this chat room, which is up and running after the event, I'll leave it open. If you look at the presentation on the website, it'll show you how you sign up to it, and it's really very easy to set this up. And obviously, I'm thinking how useful this could be in an online environment. And interestingly, Piazza have set up a Q&A facility where that would be a set time for where instead of this doing asynchronously, you could set a time after a class where you actually have a Q&A session on the website. So I imagine that's probably my time up, isn't it?
Yes, that's great. Thank you very much, John.